this FLN eTalk show on ULS elections. It's a privilege and an honor to host you this evening. FLN refers to the Female Lawyers Network. I don't know whether Simon Njala is already on board. You are most welcome. Feel free. Share the link. In a couple of minutes, we're going to get going with a talk show hosted by the Female Lawyers Network and moderated by Simon Njala Kaggwa. The Female Lawyers Network is a prestigious network of female lawyers across age groups and sectors. We believe in legal empowerment and gender inclusion and diversity. And we strongly believe that women can thrive and survive in different legal spaces and remain effective and efficient. You are most welcome. You are most welcome. I believe that today we'll have a very beautiful conversation about the ULS elections. The season is right and the atmosphere is appropriate. So we're going to engage with different panelists, with different members of the society across age groups, the seniors, the young lawyers, the women in law. It's going to be a beautiful conversation. It's a diverse panelist where we are going to engage and chat, and you ask quite a number of questions to the different panelists. So feel free. Our panelists are all on board. I can see Honorable Wandera Ogalo. I've seen Senior Counsel and President Emeritus Simon Peter Chinobe. I've also seen Masi Munduru, the advocate. I've seen Joshua Biamazima, as well as the key panelists that are going to have a conversation with us. So feel free, settle in as we get ready. I've also seen Asmahani Saad. Most welcome, most welcome. This is the Female Lawyers Network e-talk show on the ULS elections. In a couple of minutes, we are going to get moving. Simon will be on board, Simon Njala Kaggwa. Mildred is in transit, but she may be able to join us along the way if the time and network allows. Simon, I can see you there, Simon Njala Kaggwa. Let me ask Fred to make you a speaker so that you can take on the session. All right. Good evening, good evening, good evening, each one of you. Good evening. Most welcome. Most welcome to this e-talk show. We'll go through the entire discussion as moderated by Simon Njala Kaggwa. Right. So, Fred, can you make Simon a speaker and all our panelist speakers so that when it's time for them to engage, it's easy for them to simply unmute. Make a senior counsel, Simon Peter Chinobe, a speaker. I've seen Honorable Wandera Ogalo, Owechtiwa Joshua, Asmahani Saad, and Masi Munduru. Kindly make them speakers for purposes of our beautiful evening e-talk conversation. It's the Female Lawyers Network, and our vision is to have an empowered women in law in a just and equal world. In a couple of minutes, we're going to get moving with a conversation, and it will be moderated by Simon Njala Kaggwa, I beg your pardon. And Mildred will also join in if network allows because she's in transit. All right, I've seen you've made Mercy a speaker, Smahani, and also, I don't see you've not made Simon. All right. Okay, I've seen.
Well, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Simon.
It's such a huge pleasure for me to be hosting this space tonight, and a very good evening to everyone. I hope our spirits are very high as we gear up to Saturday, where there's going to be a historic election. But there quite remain a number of unanswered questions, which we shall be delving in tonight. And in a very special way, allow me to welcome our speakers of the night, key panelists who will be speaking and deliberating on the big issue of the day. The question remains, as indicated on all our flyers, we are asking in the run-up to the big day, we still ask a very fundamental question. Who is an ideal Uganda Law Society presidential candidate? We realize this race has pitted quite a number of people against each other, and the voices have really come out strong on quite a number of issues. But how do all these issues define the race? And at the end of the day, will ULS get the best out of the candidates that we have so far? Our speakers tonight, we have Senior Counsel Simon Chinobe. He's a Uganda Law Society President Emeritus and an advocate, very distinguished, and good to have you tonight. Will you say good evening to all everyone on the space? Counsel Simon?
They haven't yet made him a speaker. Counsel Simon, can you accept the invite so that he's able to speak? So Simon Chinobe, please accept the invite so that you're able to speak.
Well, as Senior Counsel Simon Peter Chinobe comes on board, we also have a very seasoned lawyer, Honorable Wandera Ogalo, a constitutional rights lawyer, and at the same time a veteran in the industry. Good to have you, and I believe you'll be speaking to us as well in a few. We have Counsel Asmahane Sad, an advocate and a very good analyst on the current situation. We have one of the outstanding advocates, a lawyer, Counsel Mase Monduru, who will also be speaking to us together with a very upcoming and very energetic Counsel Joshua Biamazima, who will also be speaking to us. I hope you're all on board, and I want to welcome you in a very special way. We are good to go generally. First, could I hear from Counsel Simon Peter Chinobe? Will you please speak to us? Counsel Chinobe? Senior Counsel?
Apologies, I am in transit, so my network is extremely unreliable, but I'm glad to be here. I hope that whatever deliberations we'll have shall be fruitful to our listeners. Again, I apologize in the event that I'm not here for long. It's because I'm in transit, but I will make as much time as I can for this discussion. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Another speaker tonight is Counsel Honorable Dan Wandera. Good to have you with us, and a very good evening.
Good evening.
Well, thank you for coming on board. I hope you're well and you can hear us pretty well.
I'm well and I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Well, that's lovely. Let's also hear from Counsel Asmahani Sad, a partner with KTA Advocates. Good to hear from you, and a very good evening.
Good evening to you, Simon. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. Good. And welcome aboard.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure having you
To
tonight. And Counsel Mercy, are you on board?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Simon and FLN, for the space. Good evening to all the listeners.
A very good evening. For avoidance of conflict and any other issue, there are a few house rules that I'll be dictating out to you in just a few. But for starters, Counsel Simon Peter Chinobe, how deeply engrossed are you in this race, and who do you support?
First and foremost, I don't know if I am deeply engrossed, but I am watching the space as it happens. In regards to who I support a candidate, a veteran who has not yet abused women, a candidate who does not profess to hold the accolades of wisdom, an accolade that a candidate that is not a narcissist, a sexist, and or a male chauvinist. In due course, those terms that I have mentioned shall eliminate the candidate that does not fall within that category. And
So, without contradiction, who is your candidate?
I have already answered that as my candidate being a person that is not sexist, that is not a male chauvinist, that is not abusive, that is not a narcissist. So that is my ideal candidate.
Well, thank you very much. Counsel Honorable Dan Wandera, are you at liberty to disclose your favorite candidate in the race? Counsel Gallo? Well, we don't seem to be getting him. Let's connect straight to Mercy Grace Monduru. Who is your candidate?
Simon, that is a direct missile. And I would say that at a personal level, I am really representing the interest of Ugandans who are very interested in this process. So I wouldn't want to cloud that with my personal preferences at this stage. But ultimately, as the conversation unfolds and as we speak about who an ideal candidate for this position is, it will be very easy for those that are striving to vote for their favorite candidates to know who to pick. So I'm not at liberty to disclose who at this point. Yeah.
Well, excellent. Thank you very much. Let me get back to Counsel Wandera. I've seen you vouching for Isaac Semakade. You've written a very generous tweet about him. Is he your candidate? Well, Council Wandera Ogalo will be joining us shortly, but let me also bring on board Council Joshua Owechiti, or Joshua Biamazima, who's also a panelist tonight and very enthusiastic about whatever is happening at the moment. Good to have you with us, Council Joshua. Will you say good evening to everyone?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Simon Njala. I'm really glad to be part of this panel.
Well, for the benefit of everyone now tuned in, do you have your particular candidate that you talk about tonight?
Yes, as an individual, definitely. I have a particular candidate, and that candidate of mine is one that values collaborations, seeks guidance from peers, and leads with humility and justice. And being so, Mr. Kunda Aida is my candidate in the race.
Thank you very much. Council Sad, there is every impression that you're for Council Chiparu, right?
Good evening once again. Well, just to be perhaps not too politically correct or wrong, I will say my ideal candidate is one who is not aspiring to use the office of the presidency of the ULS to settle personal scores or personal vendettas, nor are they trying to use the office to settle some personal political ambitions. And so I will say for me, my candidate is indeed Kenneth Kipalu, because as I see him as the underdog in the race, very genuine, very committed to the cause, and he has understood the times and seasons that we're in as a society. And I feel, as I observe him and see him give himself to this society, I feel that he is the one that will take us through the next 1 or 2 years as a united society, because that is what the season demands, that we unite because of where we are going next. So that is who I prefer among those who have given themselves to serve the society. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. You've been very, very candid and very honest, and I want to thank you for that. I hope Council Dan Wandera Ogalo is back. Council, do you hear me? Well, unfortunately, we don't seem to be getting Council Dan Wandera Ogalo, and straight on to Senior Council Simon Peter Chinove. What do you make of the heat and the kind of excitement that's come with the season so far?
I think we all have to be cognizant of the fact that the presidency of Uganda Law Society is one of the positions of interest, both to lawyers who are mostly the loudest in the room, but also to the members of the public who follow the incidents and events that keep happening both in the society but also in the public. This election is not exceptional. We've had several elections before, and every election, including the one I contested for, have been extremely and exceptionally heated. And because of...
Yes, please go ahead. Oh.
Am I being heard?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
So the only exception to this campaign is you have a creation of an individual that has decided to go out of our conventional known rules of campaign and has unfortunately turned the tide into one of insult, into one of sexism, into one of narcissism, and into one of disrespect. And I think now everybody is wondering, so we have those kinds of people in the legal profession. We thought the legal profession was a place where people go to deal with ideas, mental gymnastics. Now all of a sudden, we have...
Council Simon?
Has not been interested in an election where there has been no heated debate and discussion. So there is no about this except for that particular aspect that has defied the known norms.
Well, thank you very much. Council Mercy Grace Munduru, what in your opinion have been the highs and lows of the campaign so far?
Thank you, Simon. I think we all agree that elections have been more heated than the previous ones, with a lot of public interest in the leadership of the Uganda Law Society. And for me, broadly thinking, it speaks to where we are at as a country, but also the desperation with which Ugandans are looking for alternative leadership. And so the fact that you see that many of the people that are championing the campaigns around the leadership of the Uganda Law Society are outside of the profession really goes to just show how much at this point in time in which we are, there are shifting expectations of the ULS, but also the fact that the ULS elections are very dynamic and complex. And I think what stands out for me is the heightened interest and how people are relating current affairs to the leadership of the ULS. At this point, we are supposed to be seeing probably a more inward minding of what a leader of the ULS should look like. But you see that increasingly the focus of the campaigns have been outward looking. The kind of audiences that have been targeted with messages from the various candidates have been mostly outward looking. And that also goes to really show how much the opinions of those outside even of the society are going to shape what becomes of the elections themselves. But by and large, I think there is a plus for the Uganda Law Society, despite how the elections have been unfolding. Of course, there have been very many interests represented along the campaign trail. I have seen clashes between candidates in terms of, issues around values, issues around diversity, inclusion, issues around the rule of law, and each candidate has presented a different approach to what their leadership promises along those lines. And each of these views have also been met with rebuttals from the general public, but also from the members themselves. And I have also seen a conflict in terms of the sense of identity of a lawyer. In this moment, there is a conflict in terms of what a lawyer identifies as. On one hand, there are those who are inward looking, sticking to the traditional notions of who a lawyer is supposed to be, more still who the leadership of the law society should be, but also looking at the different groups represented even within the Uganda Law Society itself. You see those who are breaking off the norm and presenting the leadership as more dynamic, as more inclusive, the leadership as more fun, more representative of people outside of the society as opposed to within the society. And I think that is what, for me, has stood out in this campaign trail, that we are testing our profession, but also there's a test to the values of the law society in terms of, are the values those that are representative of the members only, or is there supposed to be a balance between the values of the profession and also the values of the outside? That means the citizens and those who are looking to the leadership of the Uganda Law Society. Does that in any way affect the forward-looking vision of the Uganda Law Society, and how does that shape how the Uganda Law Society approaches issues of public interest after the election? So I think for me, those kinds of things that have come out from the different manifestos of candidates are what has stood out for me. And I've tested also my own thoughts in terms of who I identify as a lawyer. What do I identify as? And does that have an effect on my leadership? Does that have an effect on how people perceive the law society as a whole? But does that also speak to the realities of Ugandans who are looking to alternative leadership? Thank you.
Let me get straight to Council Asmahane Sad. What's been striking for you in this entire race so far?
Thank you, Simon. I must say, Mercy has really captured a lot of the heartbeat and rhythm of this race. But I think more for me is the kind of society, and I think that's the inward aspect we're talking about, the kind of society that we are nurturing. Any society or any association that you build, regardless whether it's a small society, it's a family, there are certain values and principles and interests you want to run with to ensure that you are associating or you are carrying on as the way you should. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, thank you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, thank you. So for me, I think I dropped off. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so
Please
for me, what really strikes out, and I think these patterns, we have seen them through our elections, but I think because of the heightened public interest we are seeing, some of these things have been really magnified. For example, if I'm to talk about the society itself, which personally I'm very passionate about, I've been a member of the society for 16 years. There is no other profession I know of other than my legal profession. So for me, the ULS is home. It's family. And I also recognize that, yes, regardless, every family will have issues, will have dynamics, will have different representations. And I think time and time again, from the time the society was started in 1956 to date, the growth, the diversity, the representations have taken also a certain sense, if I can use that word. But what's shocking to me is that this election, for some reason, these representations, these kinds of forms that will come in as advocates, have been magnified. So you see labels like female lawyers versus the male lawyer versus the senior lawyer versus the young lawyer versus the downtown lawyer, or you hear all these labels. And I think in society it's okay because we'll never be the same. However, the issue is beyond these labels, beyond the way we see ourselves. Are we able to continue functioning? Are we able to have a leader who will rally us, regardless of who we are, regardless of what kind of practice that we are taking on as a society, and be able to continue the movement? Now, for me, this is something that I'm very, very, very passionate about. And it concerns me when I see a certain dynamic. Public interest is okay because we as lawyers are here to serve the public. We are here to serve our clients in any form they take. But when you see a certain narrative being taken out there, literally like washing your dirty linen in public, and you see that where society would depend on us to be their rhythm for certain aspects, we are losing that touch. We are saying that we are open to anything and everything that can come. So in terms of adversity, in terms when the public, the society expects us as lawyers, as advocates to stand up for them, where do we get that strength from? If we are crumbling and breaking down over certain aspects within our home. So for me, that has been...
Well, if I can hold you there, Council Sad, I'd like to bring in Council Wandera Ogaro. Council, this has been a very captivating campaign so far that has even sucked in the public. Everyone now is watching closely what's happening. What do you think have been the good, the bad, and the ugly about the race? Council Wandera, I hope you can hear me. Well, I'll get to Council Wandera Ogaro shortly, but Owechibwa of the Amazima, what have you found so captivating and so worrying about this race so far?
Yes, me as an individual, really what I see in this election, I think now it has become more evident, now more than ever before, that it has created an awakening for advocates and created the necessity for them to safeguard the profession. Quite a number of advocates, both senior and young lawyers, have always thought that it is just about the leadership, the Ghana Law Society, and we are training my practicing certificate. But now this narrative has changed. Lawyers are waking up with the insight of, I think Senior Dan has got his mic on, creating a feedback.
Senior Dan, I might have to mute you and get back to you later. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, Senior, good to have you back.
Thank you.
You've been in the trade for quite a while, and it's been very unusual to hear the matters of lawyers now getting into the public realm. But what do you think has been the good, the bad, and the ugly of the campaign so far?
Simon, have I yielded my time to him, or I could?
Yes, if you could yield your time, I'll get back to you. I'll compensate.
Thank you.
I think I want to begin where you raised the issue of the topic for today.
Your network sounds a little muffled up.
Hello?
Yes. Hello, I can hear you now.
Okay, so I was saying that the topic which you raised about
Honorable Gallo, there must be a problem with your network. I'm afraid I'll mute you and then get back to you when everything is clearer.
Okay.
I'll get back to you when everything is clear. Council Joshua, I get back to you now. So you were still continuing with how everything has been unfolding.
And quite convenient and coincidentally that Senior Dan Wandera got in there. I think it drives my point home where I say that in this election, it has been an opportunity for us to know and see that where some candidates are telling us that decorum, decency, respect for seniority is...
We've had a few technical issues, but the glitches have been resolved. And as we go about this show, it's quite an immersing discussion on what kind of president is ideal for the Uganda Law Society. We have our speakers. We have Wechitiba Byamazima. We have Senior Counsel Simon Peter Chinobe. We have Counsel Dan Wandera Ogalo. We have very distinguished ladies who are going to be speaking to us. We have, I'll be introducing them as they return. But I must really thank you, all our listeners, from wherever you're coming from. It's quite an interesting discussion, and I love the decorum so far. As we head to the election on Saturday, come this Saturday, the big question, the fundamental question remains: who is the ideal president of the Uganda Law Society? Well, Councillor Chinobe, if I could bring you back in a few, but as you get back, I need to engage Wechitiba Byamazima as a speaker, as one of the speakers of the day. When you look at some of the critical issues that underpin elections, there is a question of transparency. To what extent has it been covered in the elections so far? And what conviction do you have that going forward, things will be better in the Uganda Law Society?
Yes, Mr. Simon, are you talking about transparency in governance of the society?
Yes, transparency in governance.
Yes. Now, Simon, as lawyers, we receive an account, okay, from the Uganda Law Society at the annual lawyers conference at the annual general meeting. But mostly that accountability is given on a Friday, I think, on a Saturday, and most lawyers are still sleeping in their rooms and whatever. So most of them really do miss the accountability bit. But there is something that I would want to talk about by Mr. Dan Ogalo. He has said that the sentiment, I will throw out the Attorney General, is not possible. Really, it leaves now the candidate hanging because this was the biggest spinner of the campaign. Maybe he's simply telling us that actually the candidate has no agenda onto which they run on. But what I would want to mention about my particular candidate, Atukunda, and really why is it so important to us as the young lawyers? Senior Counsel Simon has noted that as a president of the Uganda Law Society, you should be able to lobby opportunities for these young lawyers. You should be able to bridge the gap within the unemployment. I think it was a public service report of 2023 that reported that you have about 60,000 jobs that are not occupied in public service. And a big number of those have a connotation to lawyers. And if you have a president that can lobby, now, let me give you an example, Simon. You have the head of the bar saying that the director of public prosecution is a rotten tomato. Now, as young lawyers, we need to get opportunities in the office of the director of public prosecution. Last year, they took among ourselves 100 slots for DPP. But now, how will that opportunity be available? We have seen opportunities like URSB registrars, labor officers, municipal secretaries, statutory representatives, all those that require the legal connotation. But we have an individual that does believe it is not. We should not be working together. So a candidate that really does not believe in that aspect of collaboration with other sister agencies, because the ULS cannot work in isolation.
Can you resist the temptation of campaigning for your candidate while
Simon, you individually? Yes, Simon,
candidate?
you individually, the moderator of this session, you endorsed a candidate in this election earlier today. And
No, I haven't.
You did. Maybe you want us to pull it out and screen it.
Please do. I challenge you on this.
Simon, we shall go to that.
No. I want you to. I want to challenge you on this now. Please make the record straight.
But to deliver my point home, that is number one. Then number two, that in this space I cannot leave out mentioning which particular candidate really brings out the aspirations and the aspects that I would be looking into as a young lawyer. I need a president that is going to give me the confidence of walking into rooms of opportunities. I need a president that is going to speak my name in rooms full of opportunities. I had an opportunity of attending the annual lawyers conference on invitation of one of the presidential candidates. I got there. We had the DCJ moderating part of the session. And I had an opportunity to pose a question that gives us an opportunity as young lawyers, those that would be able to work as adjudicators. And he promised that is possible. Now, that is the lobby that would require from our president. I'm not looking at a person like Senior Dan Ogalo. He said that, yes, this man may say all these things, you are becoming emotional, but this is due diligence. Why would they expect any person to be standing for such a high position and we are not supposed to do diligence on them? It's like we're buying land. Are we supposed to blindly buy it? No. But there is a perception out there that we, the young lawyers, are being swayed because of a conversation of a decolonization. I don't know, like Senior Simon is saying, who colonized us in the first place? No one has colonized us. And this should come out on such spaces that my sisters and my brothers should understand that the president that is supposed to be at the helm of the Uganda Law Society should have not only interests of rule of law and litigation. Mr. Dan Ogalo makes a good argument for a candidate of chairperson of strategic litigation in the ULS, but not leadership. We have in-house lawyers. We have people in URSB. What is their business? in litigation. They're supposed to be doing capacity building in their areas of experience and expertise. I'm talking about mentorship series for young lawyers. I do not want to go to court. Yes. What is the Uganda Law Society doing to observe the rule of law? He makes a valid quote that we cannot practice law in a lawless state. Is Uganda a lawless state? Maybe we could also have that conversation. He says that when your client goes for bail and they are arrested immediately, these people are not talking about a young lawyer who has not yet gotten an opportunity to even get a client that wants bail. That's not the conversation that we want as young lawyers. Me, I'm looking at capacity building. I want a candidate that is telling me, you know what, Joshua, you are still young in your practice. I am reducing your CLE training fees. That is the conversation I want to hear. I want a candidate telling me, you know, Joshua, ULS healthcare insurance is here. I'm going to give it to you. That when your madam is pregnant or your son or your daughter, you're able to go and swipe your card in hospital. That is the conversation I want to hear. That you as a young lawyer, you have taken a lot of time and you're not represented on council. As a young lawyer, because all elective positions on the ULS require 5 years and above. Mr. Tukunda is telling us, no, we need to revisit it. Why don't we have young lawyers represented so that we can push their agenda? All right? That is the conversation that I want to hear. Yes, while the senior lawyers are talking about this and that, ethics matters very much. I want a president of the Uganda Law Society that I am going to call on my wedding day and tell them, this is my president in front of my father and mother to give a speech. That is the ideal president that I'm supposed to be looking at. So while we go about this conversation and senior people saying that it is the young lawyers that are leading and swaying the Uganda Law Society to a different direction, I think we need to be very honest to each other. We are not those young lawyers. For us, we are saying we shall vote for Isaac because he stands for the ideals that we believe in. Thank you.
Mercy, Councillor Mercy, I'm glad you're back. And if they can mute you on if they can turn you on as a speaker, it will be very interesting. Well, come Saturday, will it be a defining moment for Uganda Law Society, or we can only look at it as business as usual? Mercy? Hello, Mercy? I hope you can hear me. Mercy?
Yes, Simon, can you hear me?
As you warm up to Saturday, do you think it will be a defining moment for Uganda Law Society, or it will be business as usual and all this hype will end there?
No, I think it's going to be a defining moment, but it will also be an interesting event, given the amount of attention, the amount of effort, and the amount of anticipation in the hearts of many lawyers in the lead up to these elections. I have seen in my lawyer circles how people who ordinarily would not be looking up to these elections are eager to be there to support their candidates. And so I think that this will be one for the books. And at the end of this week, there will be key messages even without being said in terms of who the Uganda Law Society is as an institution, what the Uganda Law Society is in terms of its composition of membership, and also what aspirations members are looking to in response to the context we are in. And so I think that it's not going to be business as usual, obviously. The news of who will become will be met with the same level of anticipation as it is now in the lead up to the actual day. That's what I think, Simon.
Well, thank you very much. At this juncture, I would like to bring in our listeners to share your views and perspective on the trending topic. We are looking at who you think will be the ideal candidate for or the president of the Uganda Society. Special thanks to the Uganda Female Lawyers Network who have organized this space. It's quite interesting so far. And one of the key reminders is for us to remain within the ambits of decorum. Let's be decorous, let's be respectful as we make our submissions, and it will be very nice to hear from you. But before we hear from you, perhaps we can have a word from Dr. Joyce Nalunga, the Executive Director and co-host.
Thank you so much, Simon. Actually, I'm not the Executive Director.
Oh, apologies.
I'm the President of the Female Lawyers Network.
Yes.
But we have our CEO online, Ms. Leah Nasafi Rabita. Simon,
Yes.
Can you mute? Well, what I can say is that I just want to thank all the participants for taking part in today's beautiful conversation. It's a conversation that we all need as members of the Uganda Law Society. I've been a member for the last 23 years. And of course, like every other panelist has noted, it's quite a different campaign season altogether. But I believe from today's beautiful conversation that the members will be able to make an informed decision on who will actually be the president of Uganda Law Society 2024-2025. I believe there's so much that we are learning from the different views, comments, and perspectives of the different panelists. One thing is for sure that ULS will always be a bar association that is proficient, ensuring access to justice, good governance, and rule of law in Uganda. So as we continue to engage through the different interactions and comments that are going to come in from the members of the public. Let us be reminded of the ULS that we all want and which leader we want as the members of the society. Thank you very much, Simon. Over to you for purposes of the plenary session.
Okay, it's now time to engage. I need to read out a few comments that are coming from some of the listeners in this space. Tumwesi Humphrey says, someone tell Joshua Byamazima to put respect to the name Ogola. That man is senior. Bukina Patrick says, one thing we should understand is that leadership and activism are two distinct concepts that should not be conflated. Attempting to do so is akin to evaluating a fish based on its capacity to ascend a tree. Very interesting. Navi says, thanks, Mr. Kaggwa, for such interesting conversations. It's quite a thread of replies that are coming in, and I really want to thank you very much. At this moment, let's hear from you out there. What do you make of the current debate, and what do you think would be the ideal president of the Uganda Law Society come the 28th of this month? A very interesting conversation. Well, let's first hear from Tumwesije. Good evening, Mr. Tumwesije, and please share with us Tumwesije Humphrey. Let's hear you out.
Good evening, Simon, and my colleagues on this space, and thank you to the female lawyers for this space. Simon, am I loud and clear?
Yes, you're loud. We can hear.
Thank you so much. Now, we have had Law Society, and we have had presidents. For the time I have been a member, at least I have seen 5 presidents. We have had a society which we were seeing before we joined the society. But I think we have had a society which turned into a love writing letters society. Can we test a different society? I used to be at law school, and I admired a president by then called Bruce Terere. I looked up to him, and I would say I think this president is doing what's supposed to be done. But I think ever since Bruce Terere left that presidency, our law society became a society of love writing letters. Whereas we appreciate, and I look at what Joshua is talking about as a young lawyer, has he looked at the other side of the coin? Decorum is not about giving speeches on your wedding. Decorum is not about somebody appearing before on your wedding and talking about what you wish to hear. Sometimes we need to look at what is the truth. Can we have a president who is going to tell the truth to power? Our society went into captivity. The Law Society is now under captivity. The Law Society was captured, and now, even the members, we no longer know whether we belong to the Law Society or not. All we do in the society is to get CLE points and renew our pieces and move forward. But we have not had a situation where a society looks at doctors demonstrating for non-deployment, and the Law Society comes up to guide the doctors on their rights and on what they deserve. As a result of these elections, by the way, even a common man who is not a voter has developed interest in to know what Law Society is. And Law Society, by its mandate, does not, we belong there as members, but its activities, it helps every Ugandan. That's a society we need. That is a society which stands up and tells the truth to power that would be. We don't want a society where we get a president, once he's elected, he's promised that after being the president, he will become a judge. And then, he does not concern about our members' priorities.
Well, point taken.
We want
I want to thank you very much. Let me bring on Mr. Egan, Council Egan, Pamba Egan. Hello, Egan?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I also thank the Female Lawyers Committee for organizing this space. So basically for me, it's like a comment. I'm not going to say much, but as we are headed to the polls on Saturday, as we are going to vote, as we are going to tick, for me, I do believe we don't have to be aggressive. We don't have to bang tables. We don't have to abuse judges. We don't have to insult the Attorney General. For me, I believe we can engage people we disagree with and make them agree with us peacefully. You can challenge those who don't agree with you in a peaceful way. I do not think that Semakade is the right man for the job. I hope that on Saturday, he doesn't win. Because if he wins, I don't know how our society is going to be. A man who abused Justice Abodo, a man who insults everyone who doesn't agree with him, does not deserve to be our president. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Let me bring in Lowani Ronald. Hi, Lowani. Good to have you, and please share your perspective. Hi, Lowani. Well, I think I have lost Lowani. Lowan Ronald? Okay. Ikondere Washua, good evening and thank you for coming on board. What's your opinion?
Okay, thank you, Simon, and I hope everyone is hearing me. Good evening to everyone. I'm going just to supplement on what Senior Counsel Chinove and OHT was said. I think the society needs someone who is very sane. We need someone with decency. We need someone who's going to protect the nobility of our profession. I don't know why many people are going with a candidate who even speaks publicly that is a radicalist. I don't know. Has the world lost the sanity to really scrutinize and know who is the right candidate? Do we need a radical person? Do we need a person that is going to insult? There is, I think, I'm going to appreciate for those who have really uphold the nobility of the profession for having, like, at least there is some sanity in the public. And therefore, we need to protect that. As lawyers, we ought to protect the sanity. We ought to protect the nobility of the profession. Not these things of coming with afros, coming with a poor dressing code. What really are you going to portray to the public that you need it to trust you with the knowledge to interpret the law, the knowledge to understand and interpret everything around them. So
Yeah.
as lawyers, I believe we know the right candidate. There is no need of anyone to come
Thank you
on the
very
floor.
much.
Okay,
Thank you very much. And it's good to have with us President Emeritus of the Uganda Law Society, Senior Counsel Bruce Cherere. I believe he has a word for us tonight. Counsel, good to have you. A very good evening. Share with us your perspective on how things are running with the Uganda Law Society presidential race. Counsel Bruce? Well, as we bring Counsel Bruce on board, there are quite a number of interested speakers that I would like to bring online. But just a reminder, let's keep within the confines of a debate without necessarily being harsh towards a given candidate. Let's talk about values, the ideals of the president that the Uganda Law Society would envisage or would aspire to have come this Saturday. There will be someone. Well, I need to recognize Jimmy Spire Sentongo. You are not a lawyer though, but I know you tuned in, and let's hear from Senior Counsel Bruce. Senior, good to have you in the space, and good evening.
Thank you, Simon. Good evening to you and everybody.
How are you watching the race, and who is the ideal candidate?
It's a pity we are here looking for ideal candidates when we don't have an ideal environment in which we operate. I have listened to my colleagues and they have traversed the other spaces. We are all preoccupied with, seeking for an ideal candidate. Unfortunately, we won't get anyone ideal. I think we are concentrating very much on looking at who is good, who is speaking badly, whose language is acceptable, which is palatable morality or dress code and things like that. But we are forgetting that we are in extraordinary times. And normally extraordinary times call for extraordinary ways. I recall when President Museveni went to the bush, it's not because we didn't have courts of law to go to complain about the irregular elections of the time and the misdeeds of the regime. No, that did not work for him. And it didn't work for most Ugandans. He chose a manner of resistance to what was happening. And I think when we focus on looking at all these candidates with the glasses we are using, we are missing the point. You cannot expect decorum, civility, and good language from a rebel. No, somebody has chosen to take on the system, because the system we are in currently, to him and to those who believe in him, is rotten. I would rather first appreciate why some people are choosing the form of campaign and the approach, chaotic as it might be, to appreciate where they are coming from. And I think that is where the message should be. What is the environment we are in as the law society? And what is the environment we are in as a country? I wouldn't want to endorse any candidate. Of course, I will vote, and I know.
Am I losing you, Senior? Hello, am I losing you? Well, I need to engage someone who is pretty ordinary and perhaps someone who's been enthused by the heat, by the kind of tempo in this. And I'll bring in Jimmy Spire Sentongo. From a layman's perspective, who do you think is the ideal candidate for Uganda Law Society as we head to elections? Jimmy, good to have you. As Jimmy comes on board, I just want to tell our viewers, our listeners, that we should be running up to about 10 o'clock. So it's time for us now to engage our listeners out there so that they too can have a share of a perspective of what's happening. Well, Senior Counsel, am I getting you back? Counsel Bruce? Very interesting. Let me get to Mercy. Mercy, are you on?
Yes, I am, Simon.
When you listen to the sentiments, do you wish we had more time to correct what doesn't seem to be going well?
Perhaps I wish we had many more choices, but we don't. So I guess we are going to end up with what we have, and we may not change anything. And like I said, even if we had more time, a lot of this represents our society. It represents our people. It represents their views, the values they hold. And so even if we had a longer time, chances are that people would still come with what they represent. And I think society is pushing us closer and closer to a space where we are compelled to accept people the way they are and go with what they bring to the table. And I think that's what we're faced with because, there could be arguments for morals and against morals, but who defines morals in a society where now we have to accept people, that these are the values they hold, these are the divergent views they have, and they're going to go by what they say. I'll just give an example of this contrast in this campaign. So before Council Isaac said he was going to run for the elections, there were protests that happened in the country, and there were conversations around, what would be the best means to engage with the state. And he was one of the proponents for, the safe corridor approach. And they had their basis for why him and the proponents of that approach believed that that would be the best way to engage the state on issues of accountability. But there was also another group that was for, non-conventional ways of doing things, especially protests and, confronting the state. And so at the point of the elections, he came face to face with that as he is now pushing for radicalism, and then there are people saying, look, but you say the safe corridor is the way to go and things like that. So we are really in a very fluid society where views keep on changing. So somebody who right now could be presenting themselves as having decorum and operating from a certain dimension could get to that seat and will be faced with a situation where they will need to apply a level of radicalism to get certain things done because, again, of the context in which we are operating. We're operating within an ecosystem that the law society does not control. And so that ecosystem will determine how you react in different situations, how you respond to different issues in the society in which we are working. So for me, it is to say that even if we gave it more time, people were just going to approach this the way they are. And ultimately, the choice sits with the members to determine who they want to lead them. And that will be really what we see as an outcome 4 days from now. But to say that we'd need more time and it would change anything, I don't think that's possible. People are just who they really are.
Yes, Simon Njala.
Well, let me engage you with Mazima. Joshua, where things stand now, come Saturday, what will the country miss and what will the country gain from the forthcoming election?
Simon, what would the country gain and what would the country lose? Yes, that is on the broader perspective of who the Uganda Law Society president ought and could be. But maybe just to draw it a little down is what would the lawyers miss or gain? I'm very confident that Mr. Isaac Atukula will be president. And what do we gain as the lawyers? Maybe let me just distill that conversation. As the lawyers, these are the things that we get to gain when he becomes president. One is a ULS circle. He's having a conversation that lawyers cannot walk in banks and get secured loans. They do not have that security. The interest rates are high. That's the conversation that he's having. That the SACCO is already registered. Let us operationalize it. That's the conversation that he's into. The ULS healthcare, and that is the insurance policy that I've already explained it. And then number 3, we are talking about digitization. These are the things that we shall be having the moment he gets into power. Comrades and lawyers practicing in Kabale, Masindi, where they do not need to come to Kampala to process practicing certificates. They should do that simply online. He's talking about capacity building. Number 5, reduction of CLE trainings fees. That let us reduce the fee down so that people can access these CLE points.
Oh, let's see what
Number
Joshua.
6. Yes.
Can I just interrupt you just a bit? We have
Yes.
an ordinary person, a lay person who is not a land friend, and he must be itching to share his perspective. Dr. Jimmy Spire Sentongo, thanks for coming on board, and a very good evening. What do you make of the race and how it is unfolding?
Now, for an ordinary person, they want to mirror an image of a Uganda Law Society president. That a mother in Itojo sending their daughter to Bishop Stewart University to do law. What are they getting from the Law Society president? They are getting the affirmation that when your daughter gets through law school, no one will be calling her stupid.
Can I hold
No
you
one
and
will
bring
be...
Joshua? Can I hold you and bring Dr. Spire on board? I'll bring you back.
Okay.
Dr. Spire, good to have you on board. Share with us your opinion of how the entire race is unfolding, plus of course the history around it.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Although I'm ambushed, I didn't really have anything to say. I'm not burning to say any. Much of what I would have wished to say has been said. And I wouldn't want to be the kind that speaks because I'm around. I would want to speak because I have something to say. But it's just one tiny observation, having taken key note of what is going on. Yeah, I just imagine Uganda Law Society, and this is as a pedestrian, as an outsider, but also with my understanding of a society. I think it's some kind of a community, some kind of a club of members who have certain things that bring them together, but also somewhere where they have to go. So first, they have a clear idea, I want to imagine, of what they need. All these campaigns will happen, but I imagine, okay, there are these personal consideration as a lawyer, I would want this, or this, I want to see this, which hasn't been happening, but also they have the collective desires and things they wouldn't want to be associated with or to be. But the question I've been asking myself from the time when these campaigns started gaining traction, first of all, I've never followed Uganda Law Society campaigns, and it's mostly because they have been inside there. It's only this time when they are strongly coming out on social media and seeing as though we have clear camps. This one is campaigning for this one. But also the energy and sometimes the sparks, the fires that I've seen out there. So I keep asking myself, how are these people going to be after the elections? Because this is just a short period and the society is going to remain after. So after elections for a society are not just these national elections for presidency or what. I think any society will be asking itself about life after elections. How are relations going to be after all these things that they are throwing towards each other? There are certain statements you hear say, okay, well, there is disagreement, there is people will always clash, conflict is part of progress. But there are certain things you hear them accusing of each other, or insulting and all that, and you ask, are they really going to be a society that will be able to move together as a group? Are they going to have camps? But then also you get this sense that when you're campaigning, one, you're trying to woo the other side to appreciate you, to join you. You're trying to show them that the argument you're making is a good one or maybe stronger than theirs, so that they have to ultimately select. Sometimes you listen, it's not really about argument, it's about attacking each other. Whoever comes up with a view that is opposed, then this is thrown at them. Yeah, you would imagine better of the Law Society, not to say that lawyers have been known for so much of that, but you would imagine something better. So for me, I'm just observing as an outsider. There are so many things that are new to the space, the lawyer space, as I've known it or as I've seen it on the periphery. And
Do you imagine, Spire, do
Yeah.
you imagine this race has demystified what we've always thought of lawyers as land friends, who work with decorum, speak with decorum, and do things in a very top-notch polished way?
Well, I know there are so many stereotypes about lawyers, but I wouldn't want to operate at that level of stereotypes because we all have. I belong to the philosophy group, and I know the stereotypes of philosophers are not any better. So it's not that it has demystified what we know of lawyers, and I wouldn't really want to generalize whatever I have seen, because at the end they remain as individual lawyers, and I know there are so many there who are decent, but much as I also want to talk about decorum, I'm a bit hesitant on that word decorum. Sometimes it's been misused, and I know there are also cases.
Yes, Spire, please continue. I can hear you. Hello, Spire. Yes, Spire. Well, I must have lost you. Let me connect with Norman. Norman, let's hear your take on how things are unfolding. Spire, are you back?
Yes, Simon, I hope you are hearing me.
Yes, I can hear you, Norman.
Yeah, my first concern is that we have seen elections of ULS presidents for the at least last 5 years. But one would wonder, why this time? Why they hit this time? Why do you think that people are diverting from what would be the principle, as they call it, to character? They are saying that desperate times require desperate means. But the problem we are facing as a society, like everybody says, is that people do not want to be told what they don't want to hear. And that has killed every process. Everyone is saying, this one is accusing this one, this one is accusing this one. For me, I think a prospective candidate for Uganda Law Society is a candidate who is going to speak to people what they don't want to hear. Our problem generally in this country is that when you speak what people don't want to hear, when you don't make empty promises, people say you are not talking. For example, some of the candidates, among the highlights they are making is the reduction of the CLE fees and the reduction in the subscription fees. But the question somebody would ask, before you talk about reducing subscription fees, first ask yourself, for how long has the 500 been paid as a subscription fee? Are you trying to say that the Law Society is not affected by inflation? Are you trying to say that that amount of money was put in place to stop people from accessing the society? I think we need to upgrade from a level of a typical Ugandan politician to a Ugandan person or lawyer who is going to tell people what is achievable, what is direct. For example, me, I don't expect somebody to come and tell you that I am going to ensure that when people finish LDC, they enroll very fast. These are systems. Systems come in place to check. Before you argue about a policy, it is always advisable that you first understand why was that policy put in place. Then you can understand its pros and cons. But you cannot simply come and say, when I get into power, I'm going to do this with the LDC, I'm going to do this with the law council, I am going to do this with... The question should be, as an ideal candidate, have you understood why a certain policy or institution was put in place? Otherwise, for us, the voters, we are likely to consume air. Because somebody has told me that he is going to reduce CLE. Therefore, I should vote for that person. Have you inquired into what the CLE money does for you to think that it is a lot of money that it requires reduction or even abolishment? Have you inquired into the role of the law council that either it is doing positive or negative? Because Uganda is not the only country where people don't enroll in a day.
Well, Norman, I want to really thank you very much. I'll bring on another speaker to make his contribution, as we are 8 minutes to the end of this space. And so far so good. I want to welcome new listeners who've come on board. And Council Bruce, I believe you also had something more to add in your capacity as senior and President Emeritus. Council Cherere, senior. Well, let me get back to Spire. Spire, in a minute, if you can wind up the Muntua one's view on how the race is unfolding.
Yeah, Simon, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I had said much of what I had wanted to say. It's more about the dynamics of how the campaign sometimes shows that there could be problems, there could be difficulties working with each other at the end, or how the association is going to run the relationships, because ultimately those relationships are important much after this election is gone. I think they will remain lawyers or colleagues, but I'm only saying this as an outsider. Maybe within the legal fraternity they have their own ways of dealing with such issues, but ultimately we remain human even in the context of professions, in the context of campaigns. I think there are certain things that we say to each other that stick, or certain things we throw to each other that might ultimately hurt.
So does the current trend of things speak to a revolution or a need for a revolution within the society?
I don't really know. As I said, as an outsider, first of all, I'm wondering this trend that is coming, Semakade with his back to track. We need to historicize it or to understand it in context. It must really be triggered by something from within. And everyone, much as some might be uncomfortable with the behavior of the club, the group, and their approaches, it is also important to ask, where is this coming from? Maybe there is discomfort within that is creating that. Often when people resort to extraordinary or unusual means, there is something that is pushing it from within. Not always, but often it is. I remember there is a part in Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom, where he writes about a certain group of young prisoners that joined them at Robben Island. He was referring to the Steve Biko group, who were extremely rebellious that even the Mandela group was shocked that how they were, for instance, responding to orders, instructions, asking why, where it was unusual to ask why. But he says that someone just needed to understand where these people, these young men were coming from. So this is not to really endorse the behavior, but I think strategically as a society, they need to understand where is that coming from. The kind that is somewhere in between. I'm not really opposed to radicalism, not so much a fan of decorum, because I know there are circumstances where decorum is not needed. In fact, sometimes the language of decorum is used to gag, is used to those who do not have an alternative means of expression. But I also think that the language that is considered to lack decorum is used might be used under extreme circumstances where the otherwise considered to be conventional means, conventional language has failed to work. So I don't really want to argue or think within the lines of what is decent, what is indecent. Yeah, there are certain things I've heard and I thought or seen, I thought they were indecent. But the language of decent can at times also be an oppressive one, decency and decorum and all that. So I'm mostly observing in terms of relationships, what the society wants, but not only now, what is bound to happen after the elections. How are they going to mend whatever they will have broken? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Inspire, for your comments, and I must really thank all our speakers who were on board, plus, of course, the listeners. Thank you very much for tuning in. I want to hand over to the President, Female Lawyers Network, the organizers of this space, with a lot of thanks. You've made it. Thank you. Joyce? Hello, Joyce? Well, that's it from me. Joyce? Hello? Well, we can end it on this very note, and I thank you very much. My name is Simon Kaggwa. Catch you again next time. Cheers and good night.